All right, welcome back to this week's Start Smart Real Estate Reimagined, empowering real estate agents to create a business and life they love. We've got a special guest today, Yanni Mooney, on the show. Hey, Yanni, how are you?
Hey Lee, how's it going?
Really good, and not too far from us here, and absolutely crushing it here on the Sunshine Coast. So well done, Yanni. Hard work does pay off, and certainly you've put in the hours into your business and real estate career, and that's showing in your success, mate. So well done.
Thank you.
I've got a bunch of questions to ask you um, about your real estate career, but just give us a bit of an insight. So you started quite early. When did you start real estate?
I started as a school-based trainee when I was 15 years old, working 1 day a week in the office, obviously not selling, but doing all the admin tasks and getting a feel for the industry. I graduated high school in 2016 and started as a full-time sales cadet January 2017.
January 2017. So
Yeah,
I've been doing it for what, 8 years then? Is that right?
as a sales agent,
As
yeah,
a sales
for eight
agent.
years, and in the industry since 2015. So ended 2014, started 2015. So from there, just obviously learned the ropes as a sales agent. In 2019, I opened up my business, which we're still operating today. But yeah, it's been a flash. The last few years have been phenomenal. But now we're purely a volume business, a small knit team of three, including myself. Such a phenomenal team.
Yeah.
But yeah, just process driven and volume driven, our business
Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely crushing it. I think you're the top agent on the Sunny Coast.
for volume
Um,
of sales. Yeah.
the volume of sales. So you're doing very well, and that's what really impresses me. I mean, you're very focused clearly on real estate and on your business. You've got a small business unit, so doing that volume with such a small team is just incredible. So it shows me that you've obviously got really good processes and systems in place to help manage that, right?
Certainly. Yeah. It's all about the process. It's funny. It feels very similar to doing 50 sales a year, 100 sales a year, just a couple of tweaks in process. But yeah, no, it's been consistent, and it's been such a ride.
Yeah, so talk to us starting off your career because now you're at a different level, and there's probably plenty of people listening to this that maybe are just starting out, and particularly younger people starting out as well. I know I've spoken to many younger people over the years and said, "Yeah, but I'm just young, and people won't take me seriously." How did you face that? Setting up and starting up to get to where you are today in a pretty short amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly got that. I get less of that now. Hopefully, the experience overrides that. But no, look, I going in as a puppy and not having the experience. I think for me and gaining those listings or clients' trust was to really understand the process of the sale. And for me, my career, I've been an auction volume agent. So in an area where there was certainly a lot less auctions, all I focused on was getting in the door, making the phone calls to prospect. But once I was in a listing presentation, I had to make sure that I successfully converted over 90% because I didn't have that many opportunities in the first place.
Yeah,
So for me, it was to master that auction listing presentation. And
right.
back in 2018, 2019, market was a little bit slower. Clearance rates weren't quite there, but I knew if I listed it, wasn't necessarily get it sold in that first 4 weeks and sell it at auction. I knew the sale would come, but it was to secure that listing. So I did find initially when I would go in, I guess you'd have three agents out. All three agents might be similar on the appraisal price. They all might give a similar, marketing campaign and have a similar discussion. For me, it was saying something completely different that gave me a stronger chance to either get or not get the business. So it was using past successes once I had them, but
Yeah.
giving them a compelling argument as why you should list with me and why you should go to auction.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Very much a unique point of difference in your branding.
Yes, yeah, in our marketplace as well.
Yeah. So a couple of things come to mind. What were you doing to prospect when you first started out?
Cold calling. I'd make over 100 calls a day,
Yeah.
calling homeowners,
Call connects you're
purely
talking about?
100 calls. It'd be lovely to
Calls.
get connects.
I know.
Probably
That's a
connected
lot.
30 to 40% on a good day, but 30% connects.
Yep.
But to have quality conversation. So I was never calling and asking directly for an appraisal if they wanted to sell. I was starting that conversation, sharing recent sales in the area, anything relevant to them in their street or what's happening. forming that relationship, and after multiple touch points, then asking for an appraisal, or getting the call once every now and then to say, hey, do you want to come in, and we're thinking of doing this, we're thinking of selling.
Okay.
So
So
it was
a
cold
non
calling.
yeah, a
Yeah,
non-direct sales approach really, and I love that approach too because it's about the relationship and providing some
giving
value to the people you're talking to, right?
giving the information. That was matched with social media. I'd do regular Facebook updates, live updates, live stream my auctions. As soon as that was done, send it straight out to my database, invite them to watch it live. As soon as a property's sold, text, call, email that result. So it's just really working one off the other. And each listing, I wanted to make sure I at least got another one, if not two, off the sale.
So what is your obviously, credentials will show through your process. So if someone's watching your auction, they go, okay, I'm thinking of selling. Hey, this guy looks like knows what he's doing. Did you have anything else there that you really worked on to get a listing off another listing, like a sale, I should say?
Yeah, well, it's that prospecting piece, isn't it? And forming relationships in the area. So as soon as I sold a property, a mail merge would go directly out to that street or complex. I'd make calls to the clients that I did have in my database, so that was relevant too. And even for a lot of homeowners out there where we might sell a two-bedroom unit, if it sold $200,000 over reserve, or there was a story behind it, or it was listed previously with an agent this price and we sold at that price, I think that's still relevant to a four-bedroom homeowner or anyone in the area, just painting that story. And I would call and say, hey, Lee, we just sold a unit at auction today, 5 registered bidders. Just note it sold. Well, it was listed for sale for 600,000 with the previous agent. The reserve was 600,000 as well. Ended up selling for 720,000, which is 20% over the reserve price, but the highest sale in the area. What we're seeing in the market is active bidders are moving north, and we're seeing a lot of confidence. So, would you like to know the value of your property given this new sale in the area that's reset values? So it was always just making a story out of that
Yeah.
sale.
Yeah, I like it. So a bit of a story there, but then a key call to action as well, just to see how you could help.
Certainly.
And obviously very process driven with that by the sounds of it. So as soon as you get a sale, you have a process with, hey, this is what I've got to do. I've got to do an email, I've got to do a text, I've got to do a call, process.
Yeah, certainly. And look, these days, certainly a lot less cold calls. I don't make nowhere near the amount. It's more direct, even if it's cold. It's because they're renovating, because they came through an open home and they own a property in the area. It's still a little bit warmer these days. But yeah, back then it was certainly all cold.
Okay. And how do you find, or how did you find when you first started going into these listing appointments, that you said there were a few of them, but you just really mastered that listing presentation? And I know we spoke about that when we caught up for a coffee. How did you find that approach with the, I do auctions and this is how it looks compared to what other agents were doing? And what were some of the rejections or objections you were getting there?
Yeah, sure. I think it all starts in the call out. So if you've identified that you're wanting to sell a given market appraisal, I would ask you a ton of questions about your circumstances, about the property. Try to understand where you see value on the property, either by talking about how other sales have sold in the area and where they see it sitting. So I have a good understanding going in of timeline of. I would even ask what other agents they're calling out, because I knew some agents would do less in marketing, some would do more in marketing. Obviously, it's all about them and their property, but going in with that information was very important for me.
Yeah.
But to go out to the listing presentation, again, in our area, auction is not as common. So there would certainly always be an objection to the auction sale process, whether they've had a bad experience in the past or they don't know more about the process. But even from the get-go, I would a lot of people say don't say the word auction. I bring it up from the outset and say, hey, how do you feel about auction? And just see if they've had any past experience. But even if they said to me, Yanni, do not know. And as I started getting more auction listings, some owners would call me and say, we know you like auction, but don't bring it up. I would still always bring it up and explain it to them that it's a 3-stage process. There's a 4-week stage at the start where we get as many buyers through. We don't have to decide on price right now. We can get the process in place, get the offers prior. We sell at auction. There's competitive bidding. It sells on an unconditional contract. I would talk a lot about the contract itself, and say, look, we want competitive bidding, but the benefit of auction versus private treaty, there's no cooling off period. There's no finance inspection. There's no building and pests, muck-ups. There's no special conditions subject to sale. It is done. So if you're looking at on that basis versus a private treaty sale, in this market, longer days on market back then, we saw a lot of contracts falling over. This would secure the sale. And by the way, if we sell above reserve, that's a bonus.
Yeah, yeah. What were the key objections you were getting to the auction process when you're, pitching like that? Because obviously you do that well.
Yes. Key objection is we had a bad experience in the past.
Yeah,
And I would say to them, look, I can't talk for other agents and agencies. All I can talk about is, my results. I'm trying to understand it. Some might say, oh, we went to auction last time and we got a few bidders, but didn't sell in the day. And I'm trying to understand, is that a failure? Because, here's 10 other properties on the market in and around your property that have been on the market 90 days that have not sold. Is that considered a failure? Or is it just that deadline? One would be an objection to
that's a really important one, that, that timeline. And I guess, how do you tackle that? Because 4 weeks campaign, and I get it, people go, yeah, but if I don't sell, and I always just say, yeah, but you could go for private treaty and still be beyond 4 weeks without a sale.
Yeah, don't why decide your price now? Here's a few examples of properties that are sold far higher than what we're seeing. And
Mm.
this is the average percentage. Most properties in the market back then sold under or significantly under the price. This is the percentage. So if we put a price on, it's more likely we're going to get less than it. If you go too high with your price, you're not going to get no one through. If you go too low for your price, you'll sell in a day and we'll be looking at each other. So the benefit is we don't have to decide price today. Let's get the buyers in. You've got a unique property. We discussed it before. It's pretty hard to put a set price on it. Let's get the interest in and decide price later. What that would also help with is the agent that would come in and potentially overquote. We've got $1 million property. I'll get you 1.2. I never really gave an appraisal price. I would talk sales, but I'd never promise a price ever. And I still
Mm.
don't. So I would beat that agent that would overquote because I'm saying, hey, this process, if 1.2's there, we're going to get it because we're going to not cap the price. I'd potentially beat the agents that are saying, hey, you don't need to spend as much in marketing. Well, it's a 4-week process. We need to get as many buyers as possible. It's not one buy. We want 10 to get them in. So it's just coming up with those objections that other agents might be suggesting. And then
Yeah.
once I sold more and more and more, I obviously had stories then about an auction, or stories about, hey, yes, this did pass in on day 28, but 24 hours later, we got this offer and that offer, and this is what happened. Just have those stories there. But purely, it was a listing thing for me at the start, not necessarily, going to sell 10 out of 10, because that did not happen back then. But it was to list it to convince them on that, run that process, sell it for a great price. If not, we've got plan B as well. Another objection to auction might be from an owner, oh, Yanni, we hear that you'll miss out on buyers because, they got to have their finance ready.
Right. Yep.
And I would say to them, look, that's probably not true. If we meet a buyer day one in a 28-day campaign and they say, Yanni, we don't have finance, well, we've got a ton of brokers that we can work with. We can get them ready for the auction itself. That's fine. If a buyer comes through the property 24 hours till the auction date and they don't have finance, they probably ain't getting finance in time. But we would still say we don't lose that buyer. We'll invite them to the auction. If it passes in for any reason, they'll be able to make an offer directly after the auction.
Right. Good point.
Building and pest clauses or whatever it may be. I just say to them, look, in this state of Queensland, the minute a contract is signed, the only party that has power is the buyer. The seller has no power at all. There's a cooling off period on that contract. There's a finance clause. There's a building and pest inspection. We
Mm.
could go under offer today. You accept an offer. 14 days later, we have a building and pest, and there's some major issue that the buyers just found that they want 50,000 off. We shut that door. It might be day 27, and Lee, you might have got a few of these calls before at 4:59 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. Yanni, we haven't been able to get finance. We need an extension or we need to pull out. You've just wasted 28 days of the campaign.
Yeah.
Also, once a contract's signed, you could get a higher offer the next day. You can't accept it. So the benefit of an auction, I would explain to my clients, is we're dealing with buyers that are ready, that have their ducks in a row. But you go and do your DD, you go and do your building and pest, then you come and bid at auction. You certainly don't find a home in the area, make an offer, take that home off the market, and then a buyer wants to do their things. Of course, they want to do it that way. We want them to do their DD, do their building and pest, get their finance ready, then come to negotiate, not the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah. Smart. And do you find with your clients that most of them will do a building and pests, or do you still find that buyers want to do their own?
I prefer buyers to do them. I used to get clients, and look, in some cases, I still do get the seller to do building and pests. I found some buyers would think that the uncle or the family member did it, and they wouldn't really look at it.
Yep. Yep.
But I love skin in the game from a buyer, so I would prefer a buyer to go and pay $600 for their own building and pests in the lead up to an auction,
Yep.
conduct it, and then come and bid at the auction, because that is skin the game, rather than taking one of my clients' property off the market, go and do their things, and
Makes
not
sense.
facilitate the sale.
Yeah. And with so from a seller's point of view, makes a lot of sense. From a buyer's point of view, with the objection handling, I'm sure you had plenty. Well, look, I don't want to, spend money on a building and pest and find out that I can't compete. They're probably bringing up those questions to you and
Yeah, okay.
concerns.
So on that one, I'd say, well, look, it's probably no different than you making an offer on a property and it not being accepted. Well, you haven't expended the building and pests. But at the end of the day, a $600 investment on a property that's going to be selling for $1 million, it is worth every cent. You can decide to do that if you don't want to do that. But if you go and buy a property, you put it under offer, you're going to pay the solicitor some money. You're going to pay the building inspector some money, and you might not get finance on it. You might have a bad building and pest. So there is an expense for doing business. And in real estate, $600 is not that much when you're spending this amount of money. So up to you if you feel that the building and pest is there. Mind you, Lee, where our conversation was leading before, you said you see it sitting here based on these sales and you're right in line with the figure. I think you've got every chance to secure it. If you come with the A game at auction, we'll be there to help sell it to you.
Yeah, I like it.
Another one from buyers, I think an objection with auction is, oh, I don't like bidding at an auction. It could be stressful, or we don't know where we're at. And I would say to that buyer, in the market that we've seen over the last few years in Southeast Queensland, it has completely been a seller's market. Multiple offers are being presented on the property. And I would ask that buyer, have you made an offer on a private treaty property that's had multiple offers on it lately? It's, yeah, Yanni, we missed out on this one, we missed out on that one. And I'd say, look, it is frustrating as an agent where we're selling a property and we've got it listed for a price of $1 million. We have the first open home, we have 20 groups through, 5 people want to make an offer. We've got to tell all 5 groups to make your best offer. You don't get another attempt, you got to make your best offer. And each buyer will say, well, what do we have to beat? And we say as the agents, we can't tell you. It's illegal in Queensland to tell you where the other offers are. So then you go and make an offer. You go, oh, I don't want to go too high. I don't want to go too low. I'll make an offer at $1,020,000. Let's go. Later that night, you get a call from me and say, Lee, thank you for your offer. Unfortunately, the sellers have decided to accept another offer of $1,050,000. And most buyers would say, Yanni, I would have paid $1,070,000 if I knew where it was.
Yeah.
You don't get that at an auction. You see the bids at $1,020,000. Would you like to bid at $1,050,000 now and $1,080,000 in one? It's full transparency. So when you talk it through like that, buyers say, yeah, you know what? We have been involved with a multiple offer, and it is frustrating behind closed doors. And, with an auction, we get to see where the bids are at.
Yeah, I like it. And at the end of all of this said and done, with the seller and the buyers, what has been your overall feeling of their experience with that process? Mostly positive, I assume, but
yeah, mostly positive. I mean, very highly reviewed by clients. I think it comes into communication with buyers and sellers in that 4 weeks, because you're condensing down, and particularly back then, you're condensing down a campaign where it would take 90 days to sell in 28 days. So you need to do 3 times the amount of communication, education to your seller, saying, hey, this is what the market's doing, this is where the buyers are. But also with an auction, if you meet a cash buyer week 1, you need to make sure they're still there in 4 weeks. They're cash buying the market. So you need to have a good relationship with the buyers as well. It's just communication, giving good service. It's the same with everything.
Yeah. And so you still run 4-week campaigns with auctions? Don't do it any shorter or longer?
Yes.
Yep.
Some, like I've ran campaigns for 10 days before. I've ran campaigns for 6 weeks before. 4 weeks is probably the sweet spot, because again, we spoke too short, we might not meet enough buyers. Too long, we might miss the buyers we met earlier on and not be there for auction. So it is that fine balance. I find 4 weeks is a sweet spot.
Okay. You talked about price before, and I agree. It's hard to determine where a price is going to be. You don't want to underprice it. You don't want to overprice it.
Yep.
How do you actually have that conversation with someone? Obviously, you've pre-interviewed them, I suppose, before seeing them, so you get a rough idea potentially of where they see it valued. What is your approach to that conversation? Because I know a lot of agents find that tricky, and I think this is why a lot of agents go out there and just pump out a highest price they can think, just to get a listing.
Okay, well, let's role play. Let's do it. Now, you're going to be, Lee, the very hard vendor that does not want to give me a price at all. So we can role play this. So, Lee, we've just sat down. We've just had a look at sales in the area. We have sales ranging here for 4-bedroom homes, all from 880,000 all the way to 1.2 million. And we spoke about some of these are renovated, some are in different spots, but Your property is quite unique for the points we spoke about before. Where do you see your property sitting here?
Well, I really don't know yet. I was hoping you could give us that. You're the property expert.
Okay, beautiful. Now, based on that $880,000 one where wasn't renovated, needed a ton of work, is it safe to say that your property is more superior than that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would have thought
Mm.
so. And the $1.2 million property, it's a bigger block. It has a different aspect. Looking at that property, how do you think the buying demographic would look at that? Do you think that they would go more towards that property or more towards your property?
I think mine, it's on a better side of the street. It's got
Yeah,
nicer sun coming in.
yeah, yeah. And look, when we list a property, Lee, we see a range of feedback. So we never take 10 buyers through and they all say 1.2. Often we take 10 buyers through. Some say 950, some say a million, some say 1.1, and maybe one or two say 1.25. The benefit right now and what we have spoken about this process, we do not have to pick the price today.
Hmm.
We know where the range and bias is going to come through.
Yeah.
But we've got to be really careful here because we've got such a range of property. And even that $1.2 million, it had different things. It was an awkward shaped block. It had this, it had that. I wouldn't call it a direct recent sale to your property. So we might see some buyers that say, you know what, I prefer that spot, or we might see some buyers that prefer your spot.
Yeah.
But we've got to get the buyers through. Now, you want to say to me, Yanni, I just want one buy. No, we don't. We want 10 buys because all I know in real estate is 1,050,000 pushes up 1.1, pushes up 1,015,000, and off we go. So we need to get the interest in there. And then you're probably going to keep pressing me and say, Yanni, at what price do you think it sits? I would say, Lee, here's 10 examples of where the appraisal range was for the property and 10 examples of selling significantly over reserve. I do not want to be the price closer, the line in the sand for your property. We know where the interest is at, but let's get the buyers in first. Let's build the interest. And if things go well, we know where we can head. Is it important to you today, Lee, to make sure that we pick the exact cent and dollar that it's going to sell for? Or is it more important that we discuss that process that's going to get you the best outcome
Yeah.
in 4 weeks' time?
Definitely the process.
And you still might press me before I go and say,
Yeah.
hey, no, can you tell me the price? And it would just be the same thing. Say,
What
hey,
about
here's
the background search price that you set?
okay, so we've just established that the 1.2 sale, either give or take is similar in a sense to yours. I've never told you, I've never committed to 1.2, nor have I. So in 3 weeks' time, if the highest interest is 1.1, you'll never tell me, Yanni, you told me 1.2. I said, no, we don't. We had a chat about that property and we spoke about buys, but this is where the interest is. I was never hamstringed by saying that. Did that once or twice early on, never did it again. Where do we pick the back end search price? I always go a little bit lighter with my search price, or be right smack bang in the middle of that appraisal range.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And generally, they're pretty happy with that.
I'll explain to them it's back end price where it starts appearing. If we go too high with the price, we will miss out on a bulk of the search.
Yeah. Okay. No, awesome stuff, mate. You've sold the auctions, that's for sure. A process you're very passionate about. Last final thing I want to talk to you about, your mindset. What do you do to keep a strong mindset in the real estate business? Because I know that's what often breaks people from having success in this industry.
Don't take things personally. At the end of the day, we're selling clients' biggest asset in most cases, and it can be extremely stressful for them. But giving good advice, keeping level-headed. I don't know about you, but me, if there's one negative experience or one client that you just try to satisfy the most, and for whatever reason hasn't come together, you're going to think about that more than the 10 clients that wrote you a 5-star review that thanked you so much for going back to that buy and getting $10,000 more, and it meant the world to them. So I think thinking more, and I got to do this more, thinking more of the clients that give you happiness and focusing more on the positive outcomes in real estate, because this is such a great industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And life in general, I think, focusing on where you've come from, what you've achieved, rather than the negatives that often we focus on more. That
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, always remember how you got there.
Yeah, no, I love it. Mate, you've inspired me, and I'm sure you've inspired everyone else listening to this. So thank you so much for coming on. That is our Start Smart Real Estate Reimagined with Yanni Mooney this week. A link will be in there for him if you want to check out his website, connect with Yanni, please do. And Yanni, thank you so much for coming on the show.
No problem. Thanks, Lee.